Have you ever seen those videos claiming that you can make $100,000 from worm farming in your basement? I have, and during COVID, I fell for it. Thankfully, it didn't take me very long to realize that it's a lot harder than those videos claim. But despite all that, I fell in love with vermicomposting and decided that that is what I needed to do. So if you've ever thought about starting your own worm business from home, or you're just curious on how we make it work, stick around because I'm going to show you the real inside look at our Sunnyside worm farm. From the messy parts to the little tricks that keep everything humming along. To start a worm farm, you need worms. At the beginning, I bought about 1,000 of them, but I've been breeding them ever since. Here's how I breed them. I start with a mortar tray. Now you can pick this up at any home improvement store. And then from there, I add bedding. Here's how. 2 gallons of shredded cardboard, 2 gallons of mushroom substrate. Now mushroom substrate is what mushroom farmers use to grow their mushrooms, and it's the leftover block that they have grown it in. If you don't know where to get mushroom substrate, check your local farmer's market. There's usually mushroom farmers there, and they are more than happy to give you their leftover mushroom substrate. Mushroom substrate is great for bedding because the worms love mushrooms in general, but it's also the fungi that grow in the mushroom substrate. So this is full of mycorrhizae. And then I add 2 gallons of peat moss. This is just a good neutral organic material for the worms to crawl around in. So now this is much too dry for the worms to be happy in, so I'm going to add about 1.5 gallons of water. But first, I'm going to add some amendments. About a tablespoon of humic acid. About a tablespoon of liquid fish hydrolysate. About a tablespoon of liquid kelp. So I'm going to use a plant auger at the end of this drill. It doesn't have to be a plant auger, it could be a stick. I just like the way that this mixes it thoroughly. And then we just pour this liquid into our mortar tray full of bedding and start getting dirty with our hands. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you notice that I tell you to squeeze until you get 1 drop out of it. That's if you're collecting castings. For this bed, we want to breed them. And worms will breed more prolifically in a wetter environment. We tell you the 1 drop for castings because those castings can get muddy and it's hard to harvest. We're not harvesting these castings. This bin is just for breeding. So when you squeeze it, you really want it to run down your hand. You don't want water to pool at the bottom, so check that periodically. But you want every other part to feel like it's just about to give up all of its water. And now we just add the worms. I'm going to start with 500 worms in this mortar tray, and in about 8 weeks, we'll have about 3,000. And you want to put this tray in a climate-controlled area. About 70 degrees Fahrenheit is the perfect temperature for them to breed prolifically. Now, let's talk about feeding. They'll naturally eat this bedding that's in here, so you'll want to check back every few weeks to see if there's enough bedding. You want to continually replenish that bedding. But every 3 days, I also feed them Wom Chow. And here's that recipe. Here's how I make my Wom Chow. 1 gallon of mushroom substrate. Some people call it mushroom compost. Mushroom substrate is a little more accurate. 1 gallon of cornmeal for carbohydrates. 1/2 quart of used coffee grounds to get them excited to eat. And 1 quart of alfalfa pellets for the protein. And then I just mix that up thoroughly. So I just sprinkle a bit of the Wom Chow on top. And I do this every 3 days. Now the Wom Chow is going to be dry, so I just like to keep it moist by spraying a little bit of water on top. You don't want to soak it, just enough to get the Wom Chow moist. And that's it. That's how we make our breeder bin. Now, I consider this bin done in about 8 weeks, and I should have about 3,000 worms in this breeder bin after those 8 weeks. And those 3,000 worms will get divided into selling, or they'll start a new castings bin. Hey, if you like this video and you're trying to figure out the best way to support us, we sell worm castings, we sell worms, and we sell those t-shirts. All the links are in the description below. So I do sell my worms on both my website and the farmer's market. And when I sell them in batches of between 500 and 700 worms. Now I say between 500 and 700 because I don't count them out individually for each order, but I do know that a half pound of worms equals between 500 and 700. So I'm going to sift out the castings until I get a half pound of worms. If you need a sifter, I'll go ahead and link this one in the description below. So I think I'm pretty close to 500 worms here. I'm going to go ahead and weigh them. Now I've already zeroed out my scale so that it's not weighing my sifter. So everything that's being weighed now should be what's inside the sifter. And it is at 0.8 pounds, which is good because I know that there's probably 0.3 pounds worth of worm castings and debris still in amongst the worms. And then I like to pack my worms with the castings for a couple of reasons. One, there's still some nutrients in these castings, so while the worms are in the bag, they'll have something to eat. But also I found that castings are more moist than other materials that some other people might pack their worms in. And so that's going to keep them happier during shipment or while sitting at the farmer's market. A lot of people don't use their castings only because they weigh more, so they don't want to pay the extra for shipping. I think it's more important for your worms to get there healthy than for me to save a couple of cents on shipping. This is a breathable burlap bag that I'm using. Also, since I'm packing it with castings, you'll have more cocoons in it, which basically is worm eggs. So by the time they get to you, you'll actually have more than 500. So I just showed you how I sell my worms, but really the majority of my worms go into making worm castings. When I first started out, I started out with a small bin like this. This is a 17-gallon bin. I highly recommend that if you're interested in starting a worm farm business at home, that you start out small with like one 17-gallon bin, because you're gonna make mistakes. And it's a lot less heartbreaking to kill 500 worms than it is to kill 5,000 worms. So if I can give you one piece of advice, it would be start out small. Now, if you're curious on how to make and start your own 17-gallon bin, I've got a link to that video here. From the 17-gallon bin, I moved up to a 27-gallon bin. And from the 27-gallon bin, I moved up to 55-gallon bins. And then from there, I moved up to this 1-ton bag. And this 1-ton bag holds about 300 gallons worth of worm castings. I keep all of my bins in the basement because it's temperature controlled down there. But my basement is more of a crawl space, so I understand that if you'd like to use your basement for a family room besides worm castings, I get that. Mine's more utilitarian, so I've put my worm castings down here. Now, I started this 1-ton bag about 4 or 5 months ago, and I put 5,000 worms in it. And today, it's got about 10,000 worms in it. And I anticipate that this bag will be completely full in about 5 more months. So from beginning to end with 10,000 worms, this bag should take about 9 months to be finished. And I feed it about 10 gallons combined composted horse manure and mushroom substrate each week. And once I've added my 10 gallons, I'll go ahead and mist over the whole thing just to make sure that it's moist enough for the worms because they like the wetter environment. I love this mister. If you need a mister as well, I'll go ahead and leave a link in the description. And once this bag is full, I'll begin the harvesting process. Now, I'll do it a couple of different ways. I'll bait most of my worms out and put them in a new bag, but the ones that are left over, I'll sift out. Now, I mentioned composted horse manure, and we should probably talk about that. Composting horse manure is a great food source for worms because it's high in nutrients, it's got a great carbon to nitrogen balance, but it can come with some problems. Sometimes the horses get fed hay that has been sprayed with persistent herbicides, and those will pass through the horse into the manure, the herbicides, and it'll pass through the worms and into their castings as well. And then when you go to place those castings on your plant, the herbicide that's still present in it could potentially kill your plant. Now, I've done my research and I make sure that the person that I get my horse manure from doesn't feed their horses with hay that has been treated with herbicides. If you are interested in using horse manure as a food source for your worms, you've got some research to do, and there are some simple at-home tests that you can perform to see if the horse manure does in fact have persistent herbicides in it. I like to use horse manure because, well, I'm in Colorado and it's a pretty readily available food source here in Colorado. A lot of horses in Colorado. If you do decide you want to use horse manure, you gotta let it age for at least 2 months. Because straight out of the horse, it's too high in nitrogen. It'll burn the worms, and the ammonia gas that it lets off could be dangerous. And I like to hot compost it so that it kills any weed seeds that might have passed through the horse as well. Hot composting is when your compost gets to about between 130 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that temperature, it kills all of the weed seeds. So once my bag or bin is full, I'm going to go ahead and use the bait method to move my worms to one side. The bait method is basically, you don't feed them for a little bit and then you put some food in one corner and all the worms, well, most of the worms will move to that section. And then for my 1-ton bag, I'll take those worms out and start them in a new bag. So theoretically, once my worms are out and in their new bag, I've got a bag full of castings, but they're not pure castings for 2 reasons. One, because there's probably still worms left in there, that not all the worms will migrate to the food. And 2, remember I've been feeding it compost, so there's sticks and other things in there that I don't want to sell you. So I'm going to go ahead and take some of these castings out and sift them to get rid of all the leftover debris and any excess worms that might still be in there. When I first started, I used this sifter, which you might recognize from earlier in the video. And that works fine if you're just doing this as a hobby. But very quickly, since I'm selling castings, this became way too small. So my solution was to build a much bigger sifter. And so I actually got the idea for this from watching archaeological dig videos on YouTube. They do something similar to this to separate dirt from archaeological finds, arrowheads, pottery pieces, what have you. And so I thought to myself, why can't I just do that for my worms? So I went ahead and built this out of 2x4s. It's 2 feet wide by 5 feet long, and the base of it is 1/8 inch hardware cloth. And I set it up so that I hang it from the rafters of, right now during the summer, my pergola, or if it's in the winter time, I move it inside to my garage. And since it's hanging, I can move it in any direction I want and kind of sift it that way. Underneath my sifter, I've set up 3 mortar trays to catch what falls through. And then at the end, you'll notice here that it's open-ended, and that's to let all of the sticks and excess, the bigger parts, fall off into a tub. And so with this setup, I usually sift about 5 gallons at a time. I could probably do more, but I'm a little scared too. Then I just rock it back and forth. So now the castings are ready for packaging. I sell mine in a Castings Curious 1 pound bag, a 1 gallon bag, or a 2 gallon bag. And I put them in these Mylar bags. It kills me that I'm not using recyclable material, but I haven't found a recyclable material that the very active microbiology that is in worm castings eat through very quickly. So if anybody knows of a good recyclable material that microbiology is not going to eat through, then put it in the comments below, because I desperately am looking for one. So there you have it. Now these castings are ready to be sold. I sell them either online or at the farmer's market. And there you have it, our worm farming business in a nutshell. What started as a hobby has turned into a business. Definitely not making $100,000 a year like those videos claim, but I love it, and I love sharing my knowledge with you.